right, we are going to jump in and get started with our number 8 session of Alchemies in the Lab. Man, this year's flying by and we're having fun and we're covering a lot of great topics. So I'm excited to jump in today. We got a great panel, we got a great topic, and we're going to be focused on Auth Zero and trust at logon. And we're going to be focusing on customer identity today. And even if you don't have a use case for this scenario, it's an interesting topic. Just even as a user, we were just talking about it as we jumped in. So it's going to be a fun topic. And as I said, I got a great panel of guests today, and we are going to be covering a lot. And I got a lot of great folks on the phone. And I am your host, Pete Downing, and I run these every month towards the end of the month. And this month, we actually have two. We had to jump out a week just because of a conflict last week. And then we have another session in 2 weeks. And then we're going to close out the year with another fun topic in December. All right. Today on the phone, we got a repeat guest, Mr. Pascal. Pascal, give yourself a quick intro. What do you do for Alchemy and where are you based?
Yeah, well, good to be here. My name is Pascal Pierre-Lewis, and I'm a principal architect and lead over our identity security practice here at Alchemy. My main role here at Alchemy is to focus on our overall identity security strategy and helping customers map various identity security product capabilities to their use case and business requirements. And I am located in sunny South Florida.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. I know you're a busy man, and as always, appreciate you jumping in with your expertise. Also on the call, we got Mr. Johnny Brister the third. I like that third. It makes you sound all formal, Johnny. So give us a little input on yourself, where you
Well,
based,
my
and how's
English
things in your
name,
neck
the
of the woods.
third. Yeah, that's my English name. I have to add the third on there. No, yeah. So I'm been here at Alchemy for between 5 and 6 years. Current role is the CISO, so the Chief Information Security Officer. Come by way of a long time in healthcare, a little time in the credit union space, and a military background. So primary focus here is on Alchemy's internal security, which obviously identity is a big part of that, but then also any outward-facing cybersecurity services that we lend out to our customer base.
Awesome. Well, thank you for jumping in. Can't wait to have you tell your little story in a little bit. All right. And then also we got Mr. Danny Furman. Is that how I
You
want to make
got
sure
it.
I'm saying your name right? And based in Las Vegas. Danny, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're with Okta Auth Zero. Tell us how long you've been with them and how things are going.
Yeah, I've been with Okta a little over 4.5 years. I was actually originally a customer, so familiar with Okta and Auth0 both long before that. Most of my background in product management in fintech, as well as hospitality, integrated resorts. I'm in Las Vegas, so that's kind of a popular job area, career area here. But yeah, I'm a senior customer identity specialist, part of our Office of the Field CTO. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for jumping in today, and I appreciate you taking time. And then I got to give a shout out to Mr. Jason Breslaw behind the scenes. Jason, thanks for jumping in. Just give yourself a quick intro, and he's going to be helping us answer questions today.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Jason Breslaw. Been with Okta for 4 years on the partner channel SE supporting Alchemy. So happy to be here. Thanks, Pete.
And all right, we got a great panel of a lot of smart folks, more smarter than I. So we're going to jump in today. All right, so we're going to have a little fun today. We have two of our panelists on, and we're going to have part one, which is Johnny is going to give us a little story about his experience with customer identity, and I'm calling it CIA in real life. So Johnny, give us a little synopsis of your story and how you got affected one day around customer and how customer identity fits into your history.
Yeah, so it's a healthcare story, Pete, and for the audience, I think we were just having a casual conversation. It's probably honestly one of those cases where I said too much and now I'm on a webinar. I think we were talking about some fantasy football or something, and Pete was asking me some stories about my past, and I sort of told one, and he's like, man, you got to tell that story. So here I am. That's how it happens. So I mentioned healthcare background here out of Louisiana. So we had subscribed to a dark web monitoring service, completely unrelated necessarily to identity, from a patient or consumer identity perspective. But one of the things that we could trigger off of was like a URL. So we'd put, at the hospitalname.org as an example. And it would give us, things back, chatter on the dark web, anything that it may have found with the hospital name in it, et cetera. And we started seeing high influx of like Gmail accounts and Yahoo accounts and Hotmail accounts. And we were kind of scratching our head. So, we sort of opened up a little work group to try and figure this out. Like, why are we seeing this stuff? Right. So we kind of went through the whole, I guess, our whole response mechanism to figure it out. What it was is because we had that at hospital name as one of the triggers to monitor for the EMR, the electronic medical record, had a URL that was tagged to the hospital name, right? So patients were using, and rightly so, right? There was nothing wrong with this. They were using their personal email address to sign up for their MyChart. In this case, it was an Epic EMR, and that's how we probably all use that in some degree or fashion in our personal lives. But that's how you log in on the mobile app or on the website, and you can see test results or patient history for yourself, anything like that. Well, what was happening was that these people their credentials were being hacked or breached. And we actually tracked it back to like an info stealer, completely nothing to do with the hospital. But in their case, something on their individual device impacted them. Their Gmail credentials, anything they saved in the browser was getting uploaded to dark websites and was for sale. So we kind of tracked that back and we're like, okay, like how is this our responsibility? What's the risk to the hospital here? We kind of mapped out a few different things. One of them was fraud, right? So we would see people would steal these logins, try to log in and go in and try to get like a refill of a narcotic type medication, right? And they would go out and sell that stuff, or hey, maybe they were using it for their own personal recreation use, not for me to say. But either way, it was fraud, and we're kind of fighting against that a little bit. That was a fraud concern, right? That we might be doing that. But the other was a cybersecurity concern, right? So EMR is sort of the lifeline of a hospital, right? Everything about a patient's in their medication amounts and allergies and things that we all know, right? We're all patients to some degree, but we started having some real concern about interactions with the physician or the nursing staff, because you can send messages from MyChart, the mobile app, to your physician. So we started thinking, well, what are the ways that bad can happen here? Well, obviously a phishing link, or maybe a malware or a malicious file could be uploaded, if the physician asks for maybe a picture of whatever the ailment is. Right. So we had high concern there of some things that could potentially happen as well. So it really kind of, like we were in attack mode, trying to figure out what to do and all that good stuff. But it really sort of put an emphasis on something we had traditionally not focused on, which was, the patient identity itself, where we'd always put a lot into, employees or even contractors, many physicians and nurses are contract employees. So the idea was like, all right, this is a new thing for us, and we have to do some level of validation and how can we attack this, to make sure that the person using that credential is who they really should be and say they are. So, that's kind of the story. I've got one little horror story that I'll kind of add into this. We did have a contractor who was also a patient, right? So they actually were an IT contractor and did work for us at the hospital. Well, their credential also showed up on that dark web list that we had gotten. So I actually made a personal call to this person, because they actually lived, probably within 10 miles of my house, as we sort of tracked them back from a contact perspective. So I had the conversation. I said, look, we've disabled your contractor account here at the hospital, and here's what I'm seeing. Like, you probably need to check your personal devices. So not only are you blocked from the hospital, but, you have personal concerns that you should be aware of. So I can't tell you exactly what happened, but here's what I think, and here's some steps that you should probably take. This is an IT contractor, so there's like, no way that my machine got compromised. They sort of fought me on it a little bit. And I said, look, that's fine. Your personal life is your personal life, but you're not getting your contractor account here at the hospital turned back on until I have some level of assurance that you've gone through and done some validation. And at the time, they would use their own devices. So after a few minutes, and I kind of shared the information I had, the gentleman kind of paused for a second. He said, you know what? I think I owe you an apology. He said, my son used my device recently, and he's a gamer. And I said, that's probably the source of the problem. And he said, I didn't really tie the two together, this conversation and another one. But unfortunately for him, these bad actors had not only stolen, all of the credentials he had saved, but they actually were able to log into the guy's retirement account and transferred all the money out. And he wasn't a 35-year-old gentleman. Let's just say he was very near the retirement age. So unfortunately, that sort of rang, real close to the heart, because I think we all work for a reason. It's to get through life, and we all strive to get to that point where we're gonna enjoy the next years. So I really felt bad for the person, but it was really sort of a firsthand account for me of the importance of not just workforce identity, but what do we do as a company and in our personal lives to do some level of assurance that carries on into a consumer identity. So from a hospital perspective, it was actually something that we put new processes into place to where when we saw those things, we'd reach out and we offered it just sort of as a free service since we were paying for it. But nonetheless, like, it triggered a whole other initiative around consumer identity and how do we authenticate those people. So that's the story. That's how I transitioned from fantasy football into CIAM in real life. So there you go. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, no, and as y'all can tell, Johnny is one of the smartest guys I know. I mean, we got a lot of smart folks here at Alchemy, but every time I get on the phone with them, I learn something new and I get an interesting tidbit about security. So I always love talking to Johnny. And as you can see, he knows a lot. So if you ever want to get him on a call, I definitely recommend it. Tabletop exercise or just an assessment of your security in general. He's a great asset to have. So all right, so let's jump in and talk about, why does customer identity matter? And Pascal, you're going to kind of talk a little bit about what you see, et cetera, and then lead us into Danny's segment and talk and kind of, help understand why Auth0, why customer identity, and then what you're seeing in general.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I'll spend some time just talking about some of the things to consider with customer identity, but also even why Auth0, which will lead into Danny's segment. So, overall, when we think about customer identity today, it's not just about providing, a solution that supports authentication services for your customers and your external users, right? It's really about creating an experience that feels effortless, secure, and even personalized for your users. And that's pretty much where Auth0 shines. And it's also something to think about when we're considering our strategy for solving for customer identity. And thinking about Auth0, right? That tool essentially can give your organization the tools to build this seamless user-centric experience that your customers actually will enjoy. Whether that's enabling social logins, similar to the point that Pete made, right? If allowing your users to log in with Google or Apple, right? That's important to users. Passless authentication options, whether that's using passkeys or a combination of passkeys and biometric verification. The overall goal here is to remove friction as much as possible, but without compromising security, right? And let's think about the impact of that, right? So like every unnecessary login, every unnecessary step in the login process, every unnecessary step in the user registration process, any friction in forgotten password flows, right? These are all potential drop-off points for your customers, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. And Auth0 can help eliminate that, and helps eliminate that friction, and essentially can help allow users to move naturally between the applications and the platforms that you're securing with Auth0, while at the same time keeping their data safe or their information safe within that platform. Again, these are strategies and things to consider when understanding how to support customer identity use cases. Again, the overall idea is to keep the user's data safe and give them a positive user experience at the same time. Right now, on the back end, right, within the Auth0 platform, developers have full flexibility, right? So Auth0 can, within there, you can it's built for extensibility, meaning that you can customize every part of the authentication flows through their SDKs, their triggers, their actions, and these are all details that Dana will cover. But overall, the goal is that you can shape the experience to your brand and to your users within that application, all while Auth0 handles all the heavy lifting around compliance, security, and scalability. Again, these are things to consider when adopting and building customer identity within your applications. Right? You're not looking to build that on your own. You're looking to leverage a tool that can support that functionality, right? And overall, the best part here is that Auth0, it doesn't just make it easier for users. It essentially helps teams who are building these applications move faster, because you're not really having to reinvent, like authentication, for example, right? You can, not having to reinvent authentication or registration or things like that, right? You get to move to market quicker and most importantly, focus on building features that actually drive value within your products. And so really the story here is about balance, right? It's about giving customers a frictionless experience and giving your team's a secure, scalable foundation to build on. And that's what makes Auth0 such a powerful choice for customer identity in general, and especially in today's digital world. So if I can wrap this all up, right? As you're thinking about and thinking through your digital transformation strategy, those digital transformation plans, right? You want to look to using a product like Auth0 to manage secure customer identity for your applications. That way, again, as I mentioned before, you can focus on building features that actually drive value while Auth0 takes care of the identity management layer behind the scenes.
Awesome. So Danny was going to jump in now and he's going to take us through. I'm going to stop sharing so you can share now, Danny. And you're going to jump in and take us through Auth0 and all the fun that you guys are doing on your side and tie it all together for us.
Yeah, that's the goal, hopefully. So we're going to dive in to an interesting topic that I'm a little bit passionate about. The poll results were pretty interesting, and I think they kind of play into this a little bit. But there's, of course, always the question of, the drop-off part. Do you sign in? Do you not sign in? Do you create an account? Do you not create an account? It's kind of the ultimate question, I guess. But before I dive too far, I always have to show kind of a little bit of our safe harbor slide. Some of the stuff I'm going to show today is, you could say, bleeding edge. And I want to showcase to you really what's coming, what's next, what's the future of identity. So not necessarily any roadmap items that we're going to talk about specifically, but just some concepts and capabilities that are in the works that I think you'll find pretty impressive. But as the information so far kind of shows, identity is a big deal. About 80% of attack vectors or attacks that we see are related to identity. In retail and hospitality in particular, that often comes in as credential stuffing, bypassing MFA exhaustion. I was actually just on a call last night with a customer who's experiencing you could call it a DDoS, but kind of a credential stuffing attack. And it happens all the time. We have the data and the reports. It's out there and it's happening. So it's a big deal. You need to focus on it. The poll we looked at, is what, 26% roughly that we've all personally dropped off. I have done the same, sitting on the couch and I don't want to get up and get my credit card, and the site makes me, have to sign in, and I don't have a saved payment method. And it's just like, I don't need it that much. It's an impulse purchase that is gone and that is lost. So customers have specifically stated from the research that we've done, they don't want to create an account. They may not trust the site. That's becoming more and more of an issue these days. There's a lot of breaches. People are just getting to the point where they don't want to buy things through certain sites. And then of course it's complicated, it takes too long. Me laying on the couch, I'm too lazy. That's just the way it is. But it's interesting at Auth0, we of course see at Okta, we see a lot of different things in the market. And we were talking about it just before this call started. Who are the competitors when we're out there talking to you guys, to all of you? And oftentimes it's build your own or DIY system. And some of these challenges, these security issues, the potentially lack of focus on that customer experience, it's because companies start with something simple. When you build it yourself, simple username, password, but then it gets more complicated over time. And it can seem fun as an engineer when you're kind of doing this new thing and building it, but I joke a little bit, DIY it's kind of a inevitable disaster. And my own story on that, I personally spent some time restoring a 1967 Mustang, and it's a lot of fun. I didn't actually finish because you don't realize how long it drags on and how much it starts to cost. And it ends up sitting to the side. And it's a lot more fun to sit in a brand new Mustang and just push a button and go, and to really enjoy the experience. But it's interesting how often we encounter those customers that they start off easy, their company's growing, and then suddenly, instead of focusing on that user experience, focusing on even the security aspects, you end up kind of running into that scenario where you could be the company that is in the headlines potentially. Nobody wants that, of course. But it's not even avoiding that. It's also just the experience, just the fact that your brand has a reputation, your customers, if you're a commerce-based company, revenue impact. So what do we do about it? What is kind of the next steps? And I talked about how today I want to show you some kind of bleeding edge capabilities. We try to look at it. I've been on so many calls where someone on the call will inevitably say, well, I just need a login box. Just give me the login box so I can punch in some credentials and go. And it's way more than that. And I think that's what people on the customer identity side forget. Workforce, again, we focus a lot on security, but customer identity is username and password, but it's not, especially not anymore. I won't even dive into the AI conversation and topic. That's a whole nother thing, but it's way more than just that login box. We're powering the full journey. Knowing who your customer is, it's everything. The personalization that Pascal mentioned, that's pretty important. So what we're going to look at today is how the extensibility and capabilities of Auth0 can really bring this journey to the future, I guess you could say, and really kind of make it very seamless. And I put invisible login on here on purpose because seamless isn't enough. It needs to be non-existent. We need to get to the point where we just know who you are and we continue to get to know you. So we'll kind of look at that as we get going here. Some of the flows I want to focus on in the demo is kind of that frictionless registration login. But again, we want to get rid of login. So you want to be able to just transact. You want to know who they are, and then you want to protect their information. Same with login, passkey autofill for those that have potentially used it. We're looking at some capabilities, or we have some capabilities, not even looking at, where you can do some cool things with push notifications, with rich authorization. Many of you have probably experienced it before. You sign up, the flow that could happen, you sign up, you then sign in automatically with this passkey, you do some sort of transaction and you get a push notification. And you maybe didn't even realize that that was a capability, but because identity behind the scenes is so integrated and capable, as an end user, you just get this seamless flow where things are safe and secure and it just works. And that's hard. The easier, you'll see this in the demo when I get there, the easier it looks, the harder it is, as many of you probably know. Behind the scenes, again, there's a lot that's taking place. So you've probably seen on a couple of these slides this concept of guest. The topic and kind of what I'm showing, it applies a lot to e-commerce, but it really can apply to anything. And yeah, I'm just going to dive into it because I'm more about the demo than anything. So all right. So I like to take the real world and kind of apply it as much as I can. We're going to look at a coffee shop example. That's kind of a very simple example, but I think it's an easy one to see. When you walk into a coffee shop, they don't know who you are. The barista or whoever is working there, they really have no idea who you are. You're a guest, and many businesses refer to their customers as guests. They don't know who they are. So what we're going to look at and kind of how we're going to bring all this together. As you can see here, this is our Auth0 dashboard. Some of you are familiar, some of you may not be. And we have one user there, just kind of a default user. We're going to keep that up just so we can see kind of what's happening behind the scenes. You'll have to bear with me. We've all seen how some demos can go. Recently with Meta, they did not have some good experiences. So we'll keep fingers crossed. I took a chance and we're going to do a live demo with some bleeding edge capabilities so you probably noticed there at the bottom, I mentioned getting rid of login, and there's a login button. So what are you talking about, Danny? Well, that's there for demo purposes, just so you can see that something happened behind the scenes there. And I've opened this app first time, ideally, and I'm a guest user. So what does that mean? Well, there I am. And then we now have a user. I just opened up the app. It's this really long, crazy number, and there's hardly any information that exists. But this is taking place using a service called Apple's App Attest. And Google offers a similar service to the Google Play Integrity API. And it essentially is authenticating this device. It's moving away from trying to figure out who you are, and it's saying, hey, I'm interacting with a device. And I know who this device is. Apple has told me, Google has told me, this device is a good device. I've got an identifier, it's a public key, we're good to go. So we create a user. I can kill this app as many times as I want. I can log out. There's no user. Let's go out. Let's reopen. There we go. And you'll notice it's going to be the same user. Over here, we don't have a new user created. We have a unique device that's been identified. Pretty cool. Now, it seems simple. Like I said, when it looks simple, it's really complicated. So what do you do? What does this mean? Well, I've opened up the app. I'm a user. I'm using the app. I don't know that you've created this guest account potentially. But now when I interact from a security standpoint, you can now call APIs with a user token. You can utilize scopes, claims, API authorization, all the things that you would do with OAuth. You have a token in the device. We worked with a customer on this and talking through it, and it was interesting to see this light bulb go off in their head. And they thought, wait, we can call every API with a user token now. Like we don't have to have these public endpoints that potentially are going to get hit. I was like, yeah, you have a secure app, basically. Why not? And once you get to this stage, it's no longer a point of or a matter of logging in. So again, I mentioned the login button, but instead, you're looking at simply getting to know your customer, your guest. You go to that coffee shop, you put in your order, and then they say, what name can I throw in that cup so that we know who to call? And so now instead of logging in, we're just doing some simple progressive profiling of this user. And that user is becoming more and more of a known customer. There we go. My name there. Still a guest user. So, okay, what does that mean? Well, maybe next time you go in and, I've got some points there, some hyper beans that I can get. I'm still going to go ahead and put my order in, but you can pop up and prompt, instead of asking for a name, you would prompt for an email. And I'm going to show you that through a slightly different flow here. So let's pretend that we prompt for an email on that other screen that you saw. Using our forms for actions is actually the capability. So this is using our native to web SSO, not to get too technical, but native to web SSO, which allows us to then trigger our forms for actions. The user appears to be logged in, and it makes it really easy. We'll just kind of do it a different way. Normally it'd be a slightly different UI. They would, put in their email, they'd get the code, rate, they'd go in, and I don't have this email customized. That's not the point of the demo here, but we're certainly capable of that. They'd verify their email, and then they would be done. They'd check out and they're good to go. Now I've got a flow here that kind of looks at passkeys and some capabilities there, but for now we'll skip over that. Now the login button's gone, again, for demo purposes, but that's to showcase to you that now I actually have a login. You can see my email there. And when I go in here to look at my users in Auth0, there's a new user here. And you haven't lost the context. There's still a device identifier. We can see, we asked them for their nickname. There's a lot of information that comes in with that. There's still this identity that exists, plus they have their email authenticator. So a lot of cool technical things happening there, but you can see the power and the potential of this user experience where you could keep going. And, from here, you could prompt for a phone number, you could prompt for whatever you want. As you're going through, you incentivize your users and you get to know them just like you would in real life. And again, from a security standpoint, they never signed in. Well, you guys saw the sign-in screen because we had to work around a glitch. But if that hadn't happened, they would never sign in. You have this application that, as a user, I don't remember signing up. I don't remember signing in. You can still prompt for disclosures, terms and conditions, all these different things in the different screens. But it's just this seamless getting to know you flow. And it starts secure. The moment you open the application, it's secure. It's verified through Apple or it's verified through Google. And there's no question about an insecure guest experience or somebody potentially, jumping in and taking over an account. Every time they open that app, you're verifying that application installation and that user, and you're good to go. And the great part is, now that we've done that email flow, I can now sign in on the web with an email one-time passcode. So I go to the website and I click, I guess I can sign in. And so maybe on the website, I happen to click sign in and I punch in my email and same user gets ported over. Better yet, with our native to web capability, you can SSO into the website from the app and you can just go ahead and sign them in because you're going from an application that's already authenticated. So what's the point of all this? That's kind of the next question. This is really complicated stuff. And behind the scenes, the API calls, all the capabilities that are happening, the progressive profiling, the native to web SSOs. If you're focusing on keeping the lights on, which oftentimes is what we find when you build your own system or you do your own identity platform, or if you're even working with a potential vendor that maybe doesn't have the capabilities, the extensibility that someone like Okta or Auth0 has. These are features and capabilities that you're not getting to. And that's unfortunate, obviously. I don't have to really state that, but your end users will appreciate you significantly more and trust you more. All the things we've talked about. and the experience is better. It's more secure. So it's really what I'm trying to get to today is, the future is coming faster than we realize. Things like what I just showed you is very bleeding edge. We don't have anyone that has fully implemented that flow at the moment. That was a very cutting edge demo that you guys just saw. It looked like it, but it is. But that's what we're here for. That's what we do as Okta, as Alchemy, as vendors out there. We are able to look and we're focusing on what's next. I have up here, mobile driver's license. That's a whole topic. When you look at this scenario where it's even easier than what we just showed, and instead of a guest user, you're actually just clicking a button and you know who that person is. It gives you the opportunity to focus on what you do best, making that experience better. Because the experience I just showed you really wasn't great. If you're looking at it from an end user, I'm not a coffee company. I don't know the best flow, but I do know identity. And that's what we can focus on and help you with and kind of make it so you can focus on your flow. Go ahead.
Danny, an interesting question came in. The guest scenario. So, what happens if you switch to a new phone or you switch a platform or device? Like, what happens?
That's a good question. There are a lot of questions when you get into the nitty gritty details. It is a per app installation, the way that works, the app attest and the Google Play integrity. It's a new technology that's out there. Google is working on bringing it to the browser. There's kind of a battle between Google and Apple right now called personal access tokens. If anyone follows kind of what's going on in the browser world, eventually we'll probably get there. It's just a question of who's going to win on the specification for the most part. But when that happens, it might become a little easier because you'll have something that ports between the browser and a native application. But right now, yeah, there are some challenges. If you open up a new device, it could potentially be a new guest user. But again, if that's the case and I check out and I ask for my email and I think, I already gave you my email. Why are you asking again? Not the best experience, but I punch in my email, I verify it, and now you link those two users. So now you have two guest users and an email that are pulled together, and now that user is signed in. So it's just a matter of at some point when you go into a coffee shop, somebody has to ask your name. Otherwise, nobody ever knows who you are. You're just that guy that comes in every day or something. So inevitably, that does have to happen somehow. That answer makes sense.
Yep, that made perfect sense.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I wanted to show you guys this because you've seen demos, you've probably seen passkeys, you've seen sign in. We all know what all that stuff is. What's the cool stuff? What are the things that companies like Auth0 are working on? Everyone's talking about AI. But what about not AI? What about just regular login like this? How do you improve your user experience? We can help with that. We can help you get from those legacy systems. A number of people mentioned, legacy being the main thing holding them back. I think it was 37%. A lot of our customers implement in 30 to 60 days. It doesn't have to be a rip everything out and throw something in. You can implement in pieces, one client at a time even. There's a lot of capabilities that makes it easy.
Great.
Thank you for giving me the time to kind of showcase this. Hopefully it was useful, probably a little bit of a different presentation than you're used to, but I like to kind of demo and just show what it is.
No, that was great. So you have this great, trial on the screen right now. Can you kind of just highlight, the benefit of just, trying this?
Yeah, anybody can go to our website and spin up a tenant, an Auth0 tenant. We offer, it's an incredibly generous free tier. There's a lot of capability and you can get started. We had a customer, we were talking about it before the call actually, that some of you may have heard the story, some of you may have not have, but a fairly large customer now that when they started, they were what we call a self-service customer. They went on the website, they opened an account, they put in a credit card. And then one day we suddenly saw millions upon millions of logins hitting our system from this unknown customer that we didn't really know existed. And their system just exploded with growth. So, starting with a self-service account and a credit card, you can do a lot. You can kind of really get going and go from there. So I recommend it. We have a lot of documentation labs. If you're looking in the Auth0 AI space, auth0.ai, you can get started there. A lot of different opportunities for you to learn if you're interested in anything.
Cool. And I'll throw a question out there to hopefully get the audience a little warmed up here. So, I'll kind of couple Pascal with you, Danny. Integration wise, I'm a customer. I want to integrate into a workflow. Obviously a great partner like Alchemy comes into play. Can you guys highlight, the value of Zero and the partnership?
Do you want to tell that one, Pascal, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I could start there. Sorry, I wasn't sure if
Okay.
you want to answer that, but yeah, I think from our perspective, we've part of my role here, especially I've been being here for 8 years. That involved building and at one point leading our identity services team, and so throughout the years, it started with just me, but now we have a full team of architects and engineers, all fully certified across Okta's product stack, including Auth0. And that team is starting to grow more and more. And it's because of the popularity of the aspect of wanting to modernize what we're doing around customer identity with Auth0 specifically, right? Because of all the tools and all the features that, as I mentioned earlier, that it offers, in terms of seamless user-centric experiences, securing the user while also maintaining security to the user and their data. So, from our perspective, we work with tons of customers, large and small, to help deploy and architect what this can look like in your environment. As Danny mentioned, there's some complexities with getting this done. Although, using a tool like Auth0 does make it easier. However, there's still some nuances with how you plan and how you deploy the solution. So this is what we specialize in. This is what we're here to help with. And we've done it for customers with maybe 1,000 users to millions and millions of users at scale. So it's something that we do day in and day out. And we're happy to partner with you and help you out in your journey.
Awesome. And as you were talking, interesting question came in, and it's not meant to be a curveball, so I apologize if it is. So someone asked, "Hey, does this functionality exist in core Okta?" So can we kind of highlight the differences of Okta in the workplace versus Okta, for the customer side?
That is a good question. So Okta does have our customer identity offering as well in the Okta side. So it's not just Auth0 that offers that. Yes and no. There's They're two different tools, as many people know. You have a hammer, you have a screw gun, you have a nail, a screw. Take your pick, your analogy. But they're two different tools that can do much of the same thing. One of the powerful capabilities of Auth0 is the extensibility that we've kind of mentioned, and it's kind of a double-edged sword in some ways. It can make things very complicated very fast, but it gives you a lot of capability. The anonymous user flow that I showed with Appatest or potentially with Google, that is something that you can do with Okta. You can do with either platform. How integrated it is kind of the next question. So this Appatest capability is on our roadmap for Auth0. Within the next year or so, it'll actually be incorporated. Every single API call that you make to Auth0 will include this Appatest check. So every API call is secured through Appatest or Play Integrity. That's something that we're looking at on the Okta side as well as something to work with. But the feature and capability, you could do it with Okta. It would just be in a different way. So that's where the yes and no is. It's just kind of a slightly different implementation for sure. And just to touch on the partner kind of question of that's where the power of working with Alchemy, with our partners really comes into, because some of these things are very complicated. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You're working with some really complicated behind the scenes API calls and security, and I've worked with customers where they just kind of look at you and think, how am I supposed to do this? Like, we don't have the skill set. We have a username and a password, and that's it. And we're going in and saying, don't do this yourself. Let us help you. But then you're gonna have to figure out how to do this yourself. So being able to bring in partners is really really valuable, because it's a nice balance between the two, where you can have somebody that is able to work closely with you to implement some of these capabilities that are really kind of a one-time implementation, and then they're there, and then you kind of go from there.
Yeah, and I could add a little bit more color and pepper to that too. Not only do we have, in-house expertise in Auth0, but we also have a full application development team as well, who are also certified in Auth0 as certified developers. So just the combination of being able to support both the platform, but also the application development side to help incorporate and seamlessly integrate your applications into the Auth0 platform is something we can help. So we basically provide the full end-to-end services to get you to deploy Auth0. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a good lead into kind of some call to actions as we close out today's session. The first one that I'm going to call out is we offer these really, great, what we call mastermind. I call them mastermind workshops. And we have a session that's focused on Auth0. So if you want to, kind of understand where you sit today and where you could head tomorrow, this is a good start point. And you get a smart guy like Pascal in the room, and we pull in our partner Auth0 and Okta, and we map out how you could leverage this tool in your enterprise. And it's a great effort, and definitely worth your time. And it's catered to the use cases that are just discussed on the initial discovery call. So not every single mastermind is the same. So it's a great way to engage, but also feel how Alchemy works and get used to our method and how we go about advising our clients. And then secondarily, if you want to dig deeper into Auth0, I do have a dedicated section of our site that's focused on that topic and that topic alone. There's some cool resources on this page as well. Feel free to check it out. And if you want to just deep dive a little more on the Auth0 side, you can definitely set that up as well. And a member of my team will work with you to lock that in and get to the next step. So 2 call to actions. I also put the links into the chat, as well as a link to a little bit about Alchemy. So definitely, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out. All right, as we come to a close today, I want to say thank you. A lot of great folks on the call. And so, Johnny unfortunately had to jump, so I can't do a last call for him, but I'm going to say, hey, Pascal, any last thoughts you want to leave the audience with today before you exit out?
No, I think, well, I do. I think, just consider all the things we mentioned in terms of, what to think about when building out a customer identity strategy. Understand the value of buying a tool that supports a lot of those authentication and authorization use cases versus building it on your own. Again, the goal is to really spend time as you're going through your digital transformation strategies on the product and adding value in the product itself, and let's delegate the authentication side to a tool like Auth0. And as you take on that journey, let us know how we can help you.
Awesome. And Danny, any final thoughts you want to leave our audience with today?
Yeah, I think the main thing, it's a very complicated thing, identity, and people often think, well, it's just never going to happen. It's too much to tackle, too much to do. But just on this call, the number of minds that kind of come together, you're not alone out there. And just kind of keep in mind that, like Johnny's story, if you're working in workforce primarily, you're also a customer. You're also logging into other websites. Your employees are customers potentially. And do you enjoy the login experience of your own company? If the answer is no, maybe something should happen. Maybe it's not in the budget this year. I know it's easy for me to say, but you're not alone to figure it out. There's a lot of smart minds out there that can kind of help. And it's typically not as complicated as you would think. Your system may seem unique, but we've seen them all, and they're more similar than you realize.
Well, awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you for jumping in today. I know you guys are extremely busy, got busy schedules, so I appreciate your time. And folks, if you have any questions at all post-session, do not hesitate to reply. The emails that come from is follow-ups with the video. And yes, you will get a copy of the recording today, so you can share it with friends. With that, I'll say thank you for joining. And gentlemen, thanks for having me on, and thanks for taking time.